Straight Talk Live, exploring human, digital, and social transformations. Welcome to Straight Talk Live. My name is Rick Snyder, one of the co-hosts of this not-for-profit show that is dedicated to exploring the domains of human, digital, and social transformation. And it was really conceived from this whole COVID situation where Af, who I'm about to introduce in a second, and I were just not satisfied by the conversations that are happening out there in the media landscape, in the news cycles. They're just not satisfying in the conversations we need to be having in our world right now, from everything from education to the unemployment crisis to health, to government policies, to the tech titans and what they're doing with their taxes, all the different things that we cover on this show. And so again, I am the author of Decisive Intuition. I'm the CEO of Invisible Edge and very proud co-founder of this show. And I'm going to kick it over to my other co-founder, Af Malhotra. Af, take it away.
Thank you, Rick. Welcome everyone for yet another fantastic Straight Talk Live. I'm Af. I'm the co-creator here at STL and also the co-founder of Growth Enabler. Today's show is very important for us all because it's about a subject that is trending massively. In fact, has been for a long time, and often referred to as biohacking. We've talked about cracking the code on stress management, cracking the code on oxidized stress, cracking the code on how to deal with anxiety and depression, and so on and so forth. Today, we're talking about something that is close to all of our hearts, which is age prevention. So it's okay for me because I'm young, right, Rick? So, So, only messy, but it's such an important subject, and we have a fantastic guest today who has taken the time to talk to us about his research, his dedication and passion for the subject, and of course his commercial endeavor and venture today. So keep your ears open, keep your mind open, and be ready for questions as we go through the journey. Rick, over to you. Let's crack on, as I say, and please introduce our guest.
Yes, we're going to be covering biohacking, as Af just mentioned, cracking the code to age prevention. And I was doing a little research before this show, and in the 1400s, Ponce de Leon, the Spanish explorer, was searching for the fountain of youth. And it's something that we've been looking for in mankind, humankind, for such a long time. Even before that, Alexander the Great was looking for the rivers of paradise and these ways that we can find these elixirs and these potions and these best practices to really harness our vitality. And I think there's also been a war against our mortality, or trying to find peace and reconciliation with our mortality. So we all know, here's the punchline. We're all going to die. That's the punchline. And yet, how do we have more quality of life? How do we have more vitality? How do we have more energy, no matter our biological age? Especially in today's world where stress management is more important than ever. When we're in a COVID context and we're not talking enough about our immune systems and how to actually boost our immune systems and keep them at such a high level that we are, surviving anything that could be coming our way or have a better chance to adapt. That's really what today is about, is learning and glistening from the research and the practice of Romy Jardine, who's Chief Executive Officer of BioTech Life Sciences. So Romy, welcome to Straight Talk Live.
Thank you very much, Rick. It's and off-top as well. Pleasure to be here. I hope I don't baffle you guys and lose you too much with a bunch of technical drivel, but I'm sure it'll be interesting for everyone.
That's great. Will you share a little bit about your bio? And I think you wanted to do a disclaimer as well. So go for it.
Yeah. So basically, I'll give you some history and background. First of all, I'm not a doctor, not medically trained, and don't construe any of this as medical or health advice. This is just anecdotal, personal opinions of mine, and they do not reflect my business or company either. It's all personal opinions. I'd like to share with you what I really think, basically, not what the official lines are on many things. Subject to what we're allowed to say within the law, because it's quite prescriptive about what we can and cannot say anyway. Yeah.
Great. And what is your passion around anti-age prevention and this whole thing of biohacking? Just give us a little taste of why is this so important to you, and what's your personal connection to it?
Quite a few things. Well, I'll give you a bit of background. I'm 52 years old. I started to realize last few years ago that I've been feeling the effects of aging. I've been getting older and actually feeling it. So less energy, less get up and go. Everything is much harder, whether it's mental effort, physical effort, inertia, laziness creeps in just as a fact of older age as well. And then also you have the other things that come with age and just with life health issues as well. So, we all have different health issues. When we're younger, we have none, more or less, which is good. When you're older, you start to realize, oh dear, as you get older, things start to break, which you hadn't ever thought of when you were younger, really, because you always take good health for granted. So it was how to improve my own quality of life in several metrics, but also how to improve my business and professional life also.
Excellent.
So lots of aspects. So lots of reasons, basically.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So a lot of natural motivations that I'm sure a lot of our audience can relate to, especially as we all do start aging and notice we have a bit less energy, or it takes longer to recover from exercise and all those types of things. So let's dive right in. Let's start with stress, because I think stress is something we're all really confronted with right now, whether it's mental, emotional. We might have relatives that are sick or have passed away recently with COVID or something else. Stress around finances, all the things that are happening right now in lockdown in London and everywhere else. Walk us through, what are some of the latest research on stress management and some of the things that you're seeing that could really help prevent that and even boost our immune system that way?
Yeah. Well, let's break it down a little bit then. So stress, we'll touch upon the lifestyle type things just briefly to head off. We won't go in too far because they've heard all about the different lifestyles. I won't bore them with them. So basically, the things that are important in lifestyle are sleep is number one, above and beyond everything else. And that's all to do with actually not just the mental stress, the emotional stress and trauma, just the physical and mental healing and repair process and regeneration that take care of every night. So you really need to have your sleep. And I can say this as someone who's very guilty of the worst sleeping habits in the world, and burning the candle at both ends and from the middle outwards as well. So sleep is number one. Exercise, I hate to say it, everyone, but it really helps. Exercise, helps increase your dopamine, reduce a lot of stress. It even increases what we call neuroplasticity. So in the brain, neuroplasticity is basically the ability of your brain to adapt to different circumstances and changing things in environments and just problems, basically. So it helps with neuroplasticity, gets the blood circulation going, which then also has a knock-on effect because the oxygenation that you bring to everyone and the nutrients with the extra blood circulation and taking all the toxins away mean that your body and your brain both can handle things a lot better, including all forms of stress, physical, mental, emotional as well. So we need the sleep, we need the exercise, we need the water, we need all the boring stuff that we get told about all the time, the healthy diets. But above and beyond the norm, the meditation, switching off, TV, movies, headspace, whatever. But above and beyond that, there are different things you can do pharmacologically as well. So there are lots of things in nature that you can actually take to help you deal with stress and actually have a better outlook on life and a better mood, you could say. More positive.
Romy, you talk a lot about oxidized stress. What does that mean in simple terms, and unpack that for us? What is oxidized stress?
Yeah. So, all right, oxidized stress is one of the cornerstones of why we age and why things break in the body, basically. So we used to always think that aging is, a natural process. It happens. It's nothing to do with disease or things breaking. We're just programmed to age. We get older, things work less well and we die, which is very true and is nature's way of keeping evolution going, that the old should die off, let the young prosper and have their scarce resources. Oxidative stress is one of the main mechanisms that this happens. So basically, in our bodies, 1 million times a second, you've got many chemical reactions going on. These chemical reactions, just like a car engine, you put in a gas or petrol, you have to also top it up with oil, water, whatever. The thing actually breathes air itself for the oxygen. But out of the back of the car, you get lots of pollutants. So you get carbon monoxide and all the other things. So the job of the catalytic converter for example, is to remove lots of these nasties. It's exactly the same in the body. So in the body, as part of eating food, as making energy, as part of our organs working, our immune system especially, we just naturally create lots of pollution. And these things are called free radicals. So they're basically, I'll explain in a bit more detail slowly. So these free radicals, they're basically pollutants, you could almost say. They're there, sometimes as byproducts, sometimes the body makes on purpose. But what they do, these free radicals, they basically have an electron missing. So when they bump into another molecule or atom or just a cell next to them, they will physically rip the electron off. It's like almost as if, one cell here has a nice shiny coat and a nice shiny cell wall protecting it. And a free radical comes along and says, oh, you know what? I'm missing this piece. Let me just grab that and take it. And it does it. And this is the actual bit that they call the oxidative stress, because it creates damage, oxidative damage, by ripping off this part of the cell's shell. That cell now becomes unstable, and that will now go and do the same again to the cell next to it, or another one it bumps into. So it's like a whole domino chain reaction.
They're like kamikazes. They're like kamikazes.
Very much, but malicious. Well, kamikazes were malicious as well, not to say anything political, but yeah, they're quite malicious, but indiscriminate to some extent, in that they will bump into other cells and damage them. And then those cells, once they're damaged, it's a cascade reaction. They will go ahead and damage other cells in a bid to fix themselves. So what we found to do with aging and also trying to maintain, optimal health, it's very tricky, because I'd like to say disease prevention, but these are things that you're very controlled about what you can and cannot say if it's a publicly available health product. So yes, this is part of how we think aging works. It's the oxidative stress theory of aging, where basically things break in your body. They always break anyway, but it's just a question they're breaking a lot faster than your body can repair them. So when you're young, your repairability is very good, it's very effective. As you get older, it's less and less, and the damage starts to accumulate, become more and more. So what you're seeing, so COVID is a perfect example. COVID is actually a disease of, it's the main way it affects us first is through oxidative stress. And then secondarily, it creates lots of the other things that go wrong. But that's actually a function of the oxidative stress. So it's very important that we, this is one thing that's easy for all of us to do, to keep that at bay. And you will feel some differences in your health when you tackle that. But it'll slow down the aging process massively, because you're basically trying to slow down the causes of the aging and the actual damage. And then when you get more advanced, you can look into how to actually repair some of the damage also.
With some of the leading research that you're at your fingertips that you've been studying, what is the extension of life or some of the results that you're seeing by people who are doing these best practices?
So in humans, it's too early to see yet. Okay. In the lab and in animals, so I will give you a quick bit of context here. When I started a few years ago on this road, I kept reading lots of stuff. Well, I read lots of scientific studies all the time, but I kept seeing that they were doing experiments on mice, and I thought, why are they using poor mice? What's the relevance to humans? And I thought, well, the first thing, they're small, they're easy to breed, so they're practical for a lab. They have very quick generational life cycles. You can breed 3-4 generations, in a couple of months, or within a year you can have many. So it's good for testing. So I understood that. But what's the relevance to humans? And then one of our team on the staff is actually a doctor, a veterinarian surgeon. And I remember her actually explaining to me at lunch, hello, Nicole. I remember explaining to you at lunch one day that in the training that they basically were taught that humans and mammals, is what I've seen myself, their physiology and biochemistry is 95 to 99% the same. Even a lot of our genetics and epigenetic stress factors work, in very similar ways. There aren't that many differences. So obviously dogs, you can't feed them chocolate, and cats, you can't have garlic and things like that. But otherwise, very similar. So the mice, they're all used always because they have very similar physiology to those. So to answer your question, Rick, in mice, we have seen, using some of the anti-aging breakthroughs, extensions in life by 50, 60%. Increases in strength, endurance by similar amounts. And I can attest on behalf of myself and many of our clients also, that taking some of these things ourselves, you do feel younger, fitter, stronger, more physical, mental energy. You do feel a lot better. But all we're doing, these are not drugs. We're just rectifying the things that the body doesn't do as well as it did when we were younger. That's all. So there's many things. So yeah, we're expecting in humans now at this time, we're expecting I would say, if you were to start now in your, say, 20s sometime, and you lived, according to our modern theories of aging and so forth, and all the prevention that you can do and functional medicine and so on, 120 should be very easy. But I would like to think that you can get to, 80 or so at pretty decent health. 80 to 100, yes, you would slow down and be older, and 100 to 120 the same. But yeah, I think 120 is very achievable now. I mean, there are some people who think 150 up to 200, and these will definitely come, but in time. We are getting there. But so if you were to start, Rick, say for myself, I'm 50. So I started nearly 2 years ago on this, on some of these anti-aging ingredients. And so it would probably add, I don't know, if I did everything else well, which I don't at all. I'm still human and I overwork myself and I'm silly and we have a lockdown. So probably another 10, 20 years. But the key is, so in longevity, as the industry is often known, the key is not to add more years, it's quality of life for those years. This is what's key.
Yeah.
So the quality of life I can attest to, apart from the pandemic we're in, and in the virtual Alcatraz 24/7 almost. Thank you to beloved friends in Corona. But yeah, apart from that, your quality of life does improve when you start looking at all different aspects of your health. But that's stating the obvious anyway.
Tell us
it's getting more years and better years.
Yes.
Better years are the most important.
Yeah.
Romy, tell us a little bit. Thank you for that. Tell us a little bit about what is biohacking. What does it really mean?
Biohacking was my favoriteest term. So basically, biohacking I think of the human body as the world's most complex machine, basically. And so as you apply hacking to computers, where you understand the computer so well and the code and the software and the hardware, that you work out how to get it to do things that it's not doing at the moment, or how to fix things that are broken, or how to break them. It's the same with biohacking, is when you understand the biochemistry, the physiology, the genetics, the epigenetics that well, that you can then look at, okay, if something's broken, how can we fix it? How can we stop something from breaking? And then when you go to the, quite an advanced stage, it's how to make yourself like 110%, you could almost say, which is already being done in so many places. So biohacking is about, understanding the codes of what makes your physiology work, and then, reprogram it to an extent using epigenetics. We do a lot of that. But also just simple day-to-day things. Okay, if I know that, let me think, that these 3 things might give me Alzheimer's, that using biohacking, I'll say, right, I should then take these things that will reduce my risk or it'll stop the underlying causes. So that part of that is biohacking. If I want to increase my energy generation, but you've got biohacking around increasing your mitochondrial efficiency. So mitochondria, like the power plants in every single cell. So you have biohacking basically about when you understand the body well enough, how to get it to do things that you want it to do, essentially, not the other way around, not to let it continue on its natural course by itself.
And thank you for that. Who's pioneering biohacking these days? I mean,
there's a whole community,
books and just drop a few names, because I think some of the audience members before they came on sent messages saying, "Oh, I've been studying XYZ person," or I'm looking into biohacking. What's going on in this space? I mean, for those who don't know what this is but are interested, tell us, what's this trend, and is it just for the rich?
Yeah.
Because we hear that.
Well, actually, this is a very good question. I'll answer it in a few different parts. Then let's start with the rich part first. That's the easy one. So what actually happened? A bit of background. So I remember about I'm 52, when I was 34, 5-ish, I realized my health was getting quite bad at the time, that I had just basically no energy. I was putting on a lot of weight, very lethargic, and just lots of other things that went along with that. And it started to become a bit disconcerting. And I could see one or two friends, and I had one friend who was he was about 69, 70. He was as fit as a fiddle. When he shook your hand, he almost broke it every single time. The guy's almost 70. He had retired. He was a very successful entrepreneur. And after, he was ripped, full of muscles, 70 years old. And after 6 months of badgering, he finally, I kept saying, his name was Dennis. Dennis, what's your secret? What's your secret? He wouldn't tell me. After 6 months, he finally cracked. He said, I see an anti-aging specialist in the Harley Street. So Harley Street, for those that won't know, Harley Street in the UK is like the equivalent of Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. Rodeo Drive for boutique shops and salons and spas. Harley Street is for a lot of the world's most elite doctors and practitioners that there are. So the best of the best specialists in the UK, if they're London-based, they will normally have a private clinic in Harley Street. So it's very famous. So anyway, so after realizing this, I thought, and he said, look, she won't see you. She's very private. She'll only see very few people by recommendation. I happened to, at the time, live just around the corner, which was very handy. So I popped round and saw her, made an appointment till the next day. And then, so I realized then, so this was 17 years ago, that the medical care that the rich get is completely different. And the cutting edge therapies that the practitioners could provide were unbelievable. So a lot of things that we practice now, I've seen these people like ignoring the normal hormone therapy like testosterone or HGH or DHEA and so on, that they would practice things that we're looking at now, 15 or so years ago. So the rich have had access to the best of the best for a long, long time. Whether they took it up or not is another thing. But you hear all the stories like the Swiss clinics, Latin American clinics, where they're out of the normal jurisdiction, they can get away doing what they want. You see a lot. So anyway, the rich have a completely different standard of care to normal humans, basically. And I thought, right, how can we make that more accessible to normal people, which is very, very important. So anyway, in terms of the biohacking community, I'll give you a few very famous names. Dr. David Sinclair is one of the big thought leaders in this, and he's mainly researching around what's called NAD plus and NMN, which we'll go into a bit later. You have Aubrey de Grey, obviously, Ben Greenfield, Peter Attia, Peter Diamandis, Dave Asprey as well. Tim Gray, there's one other one, just escaped me for a second, but there are quite a few. And then you have lots of these private biohackers, basically. So what a biohacker does, they basically read as much research as possible, try and understand their own personal body as much as possible, and basically experiment. When they discover something they think might help with a certain whatever, they will try it and do it, read up the dosages. So that's at the most basic. And then you have the full-on professional labs, like David Sinclair, right, I mentioned, for example, where they'll do full laboratory controlled experiments, small and medium scale. But so, yeah, very interesting subject. It's really about having to get the absolute best out of our bodies and brains also.
So, Romy, what are some of the most exciting hacks that you're seeing when it comes to actually not just stress management, but now like top performance, where we can really perform at our best? And I somehow think of this movie Limitless that came out maybe 10 years ago with Bradley Cooper, where like it was so appealing to me. When you take the pill, you have access to your full brain and your subconscious and everything that you've ever heard and retained in real time. So, and you become a genius all overnight. I'm curious, maybe we're not there yet, but I want to ask you, what are some of the most exciting revelations that you're seeing?
Not yet, but we are slowly getting on the way, slowly on the path. So one of the biggest ones around something called NAD plus, NAD, basically, and NMN. You can see it in the notes after the show. We'll type up some notes for you. So basically, yeah, these are easily the largest things in anti-aging, peak performance, biohacking, increased energy. I will explain a bit of a background first so you can see the context. So basically, every cell in our body, they use what's called NAD, for generating energy. Our mitochondria, which I mentioned earlier, these are basically like the power plants or batteries in every single cell, and we have several to many per cell. They also use NAD as a cofactor for generating ATP, which is known as energy to us. So our NADs, we don't get much actually from the diet or NMN, it's other precursor. So if we rely on our bodies to make it. So when you're a little kid, little babbas like to call them, you see they go shooting around like this, full of energy, because their NAD production is off the charts. But as by the time you get to 80, your NAD levels can go, hopefully you don't want them to, but can be as low as 1% as what they were when you're younger. And as this is a substance that your body uses to make energy, one of the main cofactors in what's called the electron transport chain, it's the most critical one actually. It's the one that's best addressed. So we've seen that people supplement with NAD and then this precursor NMN. That if you wanted to become superhuman, this would be the absolute cornerstone of your regime. So there is a lot of work and research going into basically how to become a metahuman, as it were. So a metahuman is not quite Superman, maybe not quite Bradley Cooper mentally, but it's as far as we're looking to get for the time being, basically. So yeah, NAD and NMN are definitely cornerstones of that. And there's a lot of research out there, which is something that's very, very new. I can give you a bit of history. NAD was actually discovered by two British scientists in the 1890s to 1904 or 5. One of them actually got a Nobel Prize later, about 30 years or so later, for his work in biochemistry and the human body and whatever. And the other one went on to fame and glory also. So it's been around a long time. In terms of the rich having better healthcare, so they've been having NAD infusions for, good 10, 20 years, and even some of their addiction clinics, they used to use these things as infusions. So, originally, per kilo, NAD would have been well over 100,000 a kilo. You don't need much, but well over. So by the time it gets to retail, through the doctors to the patients, you'd be probably adding another zero back then. So yeah, it's expensive stuff. So for an infusion or IV infusion, which they would give in the clinics, you would probably be talking, I think I was looking at, it was about 8 or 10K a pop for the full infusion. This is 10 to 12 hours. So yeah, very different standard of what's available to a human person. But now, for example, they reduced the cost prices down to less than 5,000 a kilo. The whole industry is a lot more efficient. So you can buy a tub of it for under $100 or £100. So it's very, very, things are progressing at quite a pace. But if you wanted to become close to Bradley Cooper or a metahuman or be a super soldier, then you have to you have to basically exploit lots of the new tools that biohacking give you and longevity. So longevity, biohacking, making your body work more efficiently, metahuman or whatever, they're all actually the same thing. It's just different spanners and tweaks and screwdrivers and different chemicals and the like that you'll actually use to form that.
So tell us about NAD, NMN. How is this? What is it? Is it synthetic?
Yeah, so
is it made in a lab? Is it made?
Well,
sorry, one more question. What is it? How is it made? Where is it made?
Yeah. So, right. This is a few easy questions, some controversial ones. So, NAD and NMN. Yeah, I can see you're smiling a lot now. So, the guys that are stitching me up, as we would say colloquially, I'm in trouble now. I don't even need to. Normally, I'm very good at digging myself a hole with a shovel. No need for the shovel today. I will dig with my hands. So basically, there are a few ways in the body, first of all, it's taught organically, that NAD is made. So there's what's called the salvage cycle. Another one is the de novo cycle or de novo pathway. So in theory, when you're younger and your body works very well, from certain forms of B3, not all, nicotinamide, also known as niacinamide, your body eventually, a long cascade reaction, will get to NMN, and then NMN is the last step before it gets to NAD. So that's when you're younger and things work well, and your body will make it from that, and also make it from, some people might have heard of 5-HTP, or tryptophan. You probably, most of you heard of serotonin, what we also know is like the happy hormone. So 5-HTP is one of the essential amino acids that make serotonin, the happy hormone, but also a small part can be used to make NAD as well. So as I said, when you're younger, it's all great. Your body's manufacturing things from these raw materials quite happily. When you're older, it doesn't do so. So it's a bit of a challenge. So what we need to do, you realize that, we need to try and make our body make more. And while we trying to get it to make more, let's actually just feed it NADs and NMN. That makes the most sense because it's quite bioavailable with certain caveats. You have to be precise how you take it. So, how is it made? Now, if it's not made in the body but in the lab, this is very interesting. So you've probably seen or heard biotechnology and the terms biosynthesis in the last 5 or so years being bandied about. So biotechnology and biosynthesis is basically when you're using, trying to describe it, you're using natural things that exist in biology, more or less, to manufacture things. So it's different to chemical synthesis. So chemical synthesis, you've been in your lab, you've been mixing all your test tubes up and boiling and distillating and spray drying and what have you. But it's a chemical product made from chemicals mostly. Biosynthesis is different. So if you look at how the human body works, and the idea is to mimic the human body as much as possible, or mimic nature, a lot of you've probably heard lots of things about the microbiome in the last few years and how important all the good, friendly, happy bacteria are, and even some of the other ones. So in our intestine and our guts, a lot of the food that we digest is actually bacteria that do the digestion for us. And lots of bacteria actually make the different vitamins, lots and lots, and also some of the other substances that we need. All biotech or biosynthesis is doing is scaling that up on a larger size. So it looks at, okay, we know in the human body that bacteria number 1 and 2 and 3 can make this. Let's try and grow them on a much larger scale. And they call them reactors, not nuclear reactors, but they're gigantic, like stainless steel vats, hideously expensive. But let's try and, use these same bacteria to make the things we want to make in the human body. Because either it's impossible with a chemical synthesis, or we don't like the results. So with NAD and NMN, they worked out how to use yeast and other bacteria and organisms to actually make them for us. So in a way, they're not organic in terms of no fertilizers, pesticides, that kind of organic, because there are no fertilizers, pesticides in them anyway, but they are organically made by organisms, not by just chemical reactions. So it's good in terms of those. Those a lot of the very expensive exotic products that we couldn't synthesize before are now made by biotech synthesis. Lots and lots and lots. It's the way that we're using to actually make things that we couldn't make before now. So that answers 2 of the questions. When we started out and we were trying to locate and source NADs and NMN, we contracted well over 100 labs, all the way from UK, EU, US. I think there was 1 or 2 in Latin America. There are a couple of Eastern Europe as well. Romania, Russia as well, and then obviously Asia, China and Japan. We found 1 in Japan that we can use in a lot of the clinical research studies, and the country manager for Europe I speak to a fair bit, very nice guy. He said, look, we can't actually supply you the quantity that you like, or the quality either. So I hate to say it, but a lot of them are actually made in China. Not in a bad way, but in the West, we don't have as much manufacturing capacity as we would like to, basically, for some of these exotic ingredients. So in the early days of the pandemic, you probably saw big panics in CNN and MSNBC and whatever else, that they suddenly realized, all our pharmaceuticals come from China, and the ones that don't come from India. And they were talking about, if we have this lockdown and Chinese have to stop production or whatever, then we will run out of all our drugs in 3 to 6 months, which is very true. We do rely on China and India and Asia to produce all our drugs, or 99% of them. And it's the same for most materials in pharmaceuticals and functional medicine as well. We do rely on them a lot. But yeah, they have a lot of production capacity. It's very important to know who to buy, who not to buy from, and understand also how to quantify if something's good or not.
Gotcha. Thank you. That's very
so all over the world, that China, a lot of stuff comes from.
We have a question that came in that we'll throw at you as part of the process from one of the guests. Romy, what would be your top tips to us listeners who are keen to drink from the fountain of youth? What medicines are you referring to, and where should we find out about the right products to take?
Yeah. Well, if as long as Rick, you don't mind if you fight for old Ponce de Leon for his magic cup for the fountain of youth, and assuming Johnny Depp hasn't beaten us to it and got there first. So yeah, there are quite a few things. So actually, as I said, without sounding too boring, NADs and NMN are the first ones, and they're readily available online. You can see them from, in most countries, well, a lot of countries now, and on the Amazon, other websites, and so forth.
And just for our listener, really quick, what does a dose of this cost? A therapeutic dose that would actually start to make a difference? Any sense, just to get a ballpark for our audience?
Yeah. So you're normally looking at like an entry-level dose around $1 a day, roughly speaking. If you wanted to go all out, so indeed,
I'm listening.
Indeed.
You had me at $1 a day.
$1 million. So then if you then want to join what you could almost term the elite, so David Sinclair, one of the most famous scientists in this area of longevity, so he advocates taking 1 gram a day, and we have quite a few clients who will take more than that, depending on their size and their activity level and what they feel, from anecdotal testing. So if you take a full-on dose of just that, then it could go up to $5 a day. But for $5 a day, you've got quite a good dose there. There's some other things that I can talk about as well, which are very reasonable.
And is this mostly IV infusion, you said, or can we snort this? Can we inject this? How do we get this in our system?
Well, you know what? You can try snorting a few of them, but I wouldn't like to be there when you do, and I wouldn't recommend it.
So what would you recommend, Romy?
But I would say that actually NADs is very good to take, intranasally, in different ways. One is to actually get in the lungs, is very good. We were actually talking to a few researchers in COVID in the hospital about maybe doing a trial and da-da-da-da. And then the other one is actually get it in your nose, but not so you breathe it in. There's what's called the olfactory nerve in your nose, and it's a huge big clump of blood vessels, basically, and it goes straight into the brain. When you saturate that, it actually goes to the brain, and it's very mild, but you can feel the effect. I've tried it a few times, but it's a pain to make up. I just do it for myself. But you can get into the brain quite well. So, sorry, what was the question? Snorting, sniffing, something else?
What's the best way to ingest or take in?
It's very easy. Yeah. So, okay. So the infusion. So in the old days, there used to be infusion, and it used to be 10 to 12 hours. All the really professional IV clinics, they would say, if it's 8 hours, you're already getting the short side. Now we've seen quite a few IV clinics, DIY ones, pop up everywhere, where they'll charge you about £550, £600 for an hour and a half, and they'll normally inject about 1 gram of NADs. So 1 gram of NAD would cost you, in terms of a daily dose, that's a £5 roughly. But except they will charge you about 500 to 600 for the privilege, and that's a quick infusion, 1.5 to 2 hours. It's great while it lasts, but it wears off very quickly. So in a few weeks, you need to go back again. And it's not really more effective. If you take it daily, it's way more effective. You take it yourself, basically. So the way of taking yourself, this important part, is that, so there are two things you want to take. NAD is one, NMN is another. NAD, the molecule is absolutely huge, it's vast. So when you swallow it, it doesn't do you much good. It doesn't do any bad. But you'll still get some benefit. It'll decompose it to vitamin B3. You won't get as much. So basically, you have it sublingually. And sublingually is basically, you take a scoop, you take a jar. We can actually show you guys.
For those of you on audio, Romy is injecting himself subliminally in the mouth. Not actual injection, I shouldn't say. Yeah. He's placing it under his tongue.
Yeah.
Here we go. Yeah. Play by play.
So basically, it's 1 scoop from the jar. Goes in your mouth. And with a bit of practice, you can actually talk, have telephone calls. It'll dissolve in your tongue in about 5 seconds or so. And all you do, you swallow it around your mouth. And the idea is that you want to hold it in your mouth as long as possible. And some of them, they're very pleasant. If you buy the plain unflavored ones, it can be a little bit on the challenging side. If you buy the flavored ones, we do some very pure flavored ones, then they can be quite palatable. So anyway, you absorb it, and the reason is for under the tongue, the sublingual we've got this membrane here called the sublingual mucosa. This goes straight into your bloodstream. So you bypass the liver, you bypass the digestion. You don't have it's quite tasty actually. You don't have the problem with it being too big and broken down by the liver, and it won't absorb into the cells. It goes straight into your bloodstream, and also is bioavailable for the brain, which is great. NMN is exactly, that was actually NMN, but exactly the same thing. Under your tongue, you just put it under your tongue because it's easy to dissolve. Because I got into a habit when I was trying out the flavoring and the testing of different formulas of putting it on my tongue, but I'd end up eating it like a sweet, which is not good. But under your tongue, you have the most absorption, and you just swirl it around your mouth. Try and keep it for as long as possible. That's it, basically, guys. You put it in your mouth, you taste the flavor, enjoy it. If it's not one of the two, not one with too many vitamins in it. Vitamins all taste horrible, by the way. So, and that's all there is to it. Very simple. So for most people, they normally have one by the bed first thing in the morning, one on the desk, at home these days, not in the office obviously so much, and just a couple of scoops during the day, and that's it. You're good to go. And that actually will take care of a lot of the things, longevity and anti-aging wise, at a very simple core level, basically. So that was simple.
Romy, we thank you for the live demo. That was haven't had that before.
Just happened to have about a small selection on my desk.
Do you take these every day? Do you sort of?
Well, actually, it's a very good question. I like to alternate, like any good biohacker. I like to alternate and cycle quite a lot. So what happens is the NAD and NMN, I have basically realized from trial and error over 2+ years that when I take it every day, I just feel much better and I feel good and I feel younger. I feel this is personal, anecdotal, guys. It's not medical or anything like that. It's just how I personally feel. So yeah, I feel a lot more energy, get up and go. I can cope with a lot of things. So after basically asking about stress, my resilience has gone up, hugely. And I do other things as well. I've tried many times, normally once a month-ish, I will cycle off just to see what happens. And I can basically see, it's slow. It takes a few days. I can start to slow down, feel lethargic. It's gradual, it's subtle. But after a few days, if I don't take them for a week, I can say, oh yeah, I'm just, first you start thinking what's a bit wrong. I'm not quite as sharp and everything's a bit hard at work and you're tired. When I take those, I will tell you about my personal lifestyle in a bit, but I very rarely feel tired, which is great. I may not feel like running a marathon, but that's due to being bent in half behind the desk, for 3/4 of the day, which is not good. But energy, you feel a lot of energy, which is good. Mental and physical especially, mental energy also. But yeah, I like to cycle and try. So what we normally do when we're developing new formulas, all of the core team and then the extended team, some of our, very old clients do like testers for us. Then we do all the research first. Huge amount of research goes into a different product. Then we try lots of different formulations, different versions. They have to go through the regulatory processes, which are, a lot basically. And then we experiment, we try it. So we cycle on and off things and see what works, what doesn't work, which combinations, what's synergistic. So it's a complex but very interesting, challenging process. Many, as I said, that for me, the human body is the world's most complex machine. So there are many moving parts, and every day we're learning more and more as we study more, research more, talk to other scientists, doctors. Yeah, we learn more.
One question that comes up for me, Romy, is, the placebo effect has been very well researched and documented throughout history for a long time now. And a lot of times if we think something is going to help us, it actually starts to help us. And there's this thing that our mind does to improve our mood or our mind state or something because we think it's actually going to be helpful. Have they done a lot of control group studies with this, with placebo effects, plus the actual compositions that you work with to really see the differences there?
Yeah. So basically, the placebo. I'm glad. Thank you for mentioning that, Rick. So basically, placebo effects and what's the word I had for it? It will come to you anyway. So yeah, the brain, it's very important that the brain and the mind, we have both, that we get them on our side. So yes, in the clinical studies and the randomized control trials, lots of things are done with a placebo control arm, basically. On NADs and MN, I think that because the mass production, not quite mass production, but because this semi-affordable production technology is so new, there aren't as many large-scale human clinical trials as they would like to have yet, because we've only started getting the prices down to a manageable-ish level, basically. So not that many placebos for NADs and NMN, but we can see where they haven't been used and where they have been used, the differences in people. So, from a clinical or pharmaceutical point of view, we're only talking about from a food supplement point of view, they do the placebo arms, and there's been lots of experiments, around disease, basically, which we're not allowed to talk about. Unfortunately, I don't agree with the system, didn't write the rules, but smart enough to know when not to break them. But they always do a placebo control arm, and for all the substances that we use, all the ingredients, there are lots of studies with placebo-controlled arms. So it's very, very key. But yeah, Rick, you know what? The placebo effect, we should actually use that to our advantage. We want to get the psyche on our side because it does make a difference. We have seen, there's like they've shown with the microbiome, that how key the microbiome is to our health, including mental health and our stress resilience. It's very key. So it's very key we get the psyche on our side to actually, we feel mentally better, feel physically better, but you'll be amazed at the biochemical changes that happen when you have the placebo effect, basically. So we should use that as a tool, not discount it as something negative. So anyway, fire away.
Helpful.
We have some questions that have come in. Of course, there's it's a vast area, right? When you're looking at biohacking, you're looking at some form of age prevention or age control or quality of life. I mean, I resonate with the quality of life term, and many of us during the COVID period, of course, we're in our bunkers, and now we're permanently in our bunkers, at least for the foreseeable future. At least some of us in some of the countries out there in London, for sure. We're not going to go anywhere before the end of March or longer. So this is going to be another year where we're going to have to get used to or get super comfortable with working by ourselves and getting used to this channel, right? Getting more on these virtual webinars, learning from it, growing with it, building friendships with it, and so on and so forth. And it's whoever you may be. I mean, even the most prolific optimists this time round have started to
we're challenged.
A bit shaky. Challenged. Yeah, I mean they're a bit shaky, and and we're grateful, Rick and I and the team at STL, that we have this happening every single week. So we're constantly learning from some of the best minds on the planet. So this is almost our NAD or NMN, frankly, because you have to be in the right state of mind. Mindset, your state makes a massive difference. So I think everything you're saying is bang on. A couple of questions are coming in. Before we ask those questions, tell us a little bit about. So is it just these two things? Like, reel off a couple of other.
Oh, yes. Let's give you a bit of a hint, basically. So for oxidative stress, we talk about lots. So no point talking about something unless I give you some suggestions of what you can do to help yourself.
That's right. Yeah.
So there are two very cheap things that you can buy online from anywhere. We don't bother selling the single ingredients because we put them in formulations. They're too cheap to bother the single ingredient thing. So there's NAC. So you have NAD, which is the big anti-aging one. Then you have NAC. NAC stands for N-acetylcysteine, but we'll put a little notes together afterwards. That is around $20 odd for about 120 capsules. If you take one of those a day, it's great. If you take two a day, it's even better. So, Rick, what's the maths on here? If it's $20 for 120, so $20 would last you 4 months if you took it once a day. $20 would last you 2 months if you took it twice a day. So basically, it doesn't cost you very much. It's costing you, 25 cents a day if you're taking it like twice a day. That's a great one for the oxidative stress. And then there's its partner in crime, ALA, alpha lipoic acid. That's also brilliant. And it's the same price point, $25 tops for 120 capsules, and they're both like 600 milligrams, so very potent. And it's the standard that you'll find everywhere online. I would take those every day. Start off with those because, if you can't afford the NAD element stuff, that's a good place to start. And it's a good place to add to whatever regime that you have. That will take care of a lot of the oxidative stress. Not all, but a lot of it. These basically will mop up the free radicals. They'll put them back to their normal state to some extent as well. Prevent you from some oxidative stress, damage caused by the free radicals as well. Then in terms of other ingredients, I'm sure you guys have heard about red wine being very good for you, supposedly. Mm-hmm. So I always like to test. I've been testing that theory for years, hence the chubby cheeks. But so in red wine, the actual bit that they found that really helps us is called resveratrol. And resveratrol is basically what we call a phytochemical. It's a natural chemical made by plants, hence the name. Resveratrol is one of the largest discoveries in anti-aging also. It's not quite as cheap as NAC and ALA, but it's still a lot cheaper than NADs and NMN. So resveratrol, most people in longevity and biohackers, that's one of the first things they add to their regime. And it's very cost effective. Then you have a more modern, complex cousin, let's call it resveratrol, called Pterostilbin. This is what they call a methylated analog resveratrol. Basically adds a methyl group, which we will talk about in a bit. That is very good for anti-aging. So these things help your body run optimally. They help to slow down the aging process. I'm trying not to say that they help stop things breaking or fix things. I'm not allowed to say that, so I'm trying not to say that. But yeah, they're good for overall general well-being and health, and in anti-aging, they're kind of your cornerstones. So basically, a lot of people, they take a cocktail of resveratrol or Pterostilbin, NADs or NMN, then NAC or ALA, and that's a very potent cocktail, which is still quite, the NAD and NMN, obviously, the more expensive, still quite potent, but you would feel that quite quickly. But I can tell you anecdotally that normally when you first take NAD or NMN, if you've taken the full-on dose, like a gram a day, I will give you my example, that I was at the age of, say, mid to late 40s, now overworking like most people, self-motivated, overdriven entrepreneur. And then what happened if I would finish work normally late, say 8, 10, whatever it is. And when I finished, I would just want to be horizontal, literally flat out on the sofa. I would probably win prizes for Coach Potato, a king of the millennia, not even of the year. Very bad. And I found after 1 week of taking NMN religiously 4 times a day, so I was taking a gramish a day, and after 1 week, I went to the gym. It was 3 times or 4 times in a week, 4 times a week. I was lifting heavy weights. And after after like the 3rd or 4th time, I said to myself and a few friends, I thought, you know what? This is quite unbelievable. This is really good. I haven't felt this energetic or great for ages. And not just that, last time I went to a gym 4 times a week, I was a student at the age of 18 or 19, 20 at the most. This is in my almost 50 when this phenomenon happened, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. Obviously, there's something to it. And lots of people we speak to, they all say the same, that when they first started taking it, they have a massive rush in energy. So it does something. What it does also, if you're a hardworking exec, professional entrepreneur, or mother or housewife, or whatever, it does give you a lot of mental and physical energy. But there's a warning label that goes along with that, the small print. You'll think you need a lot less sleep because you're not tired at all. You just keep going like the Duracell or the Energizer Bunny. And but your body still needs sleep, and it needs to do a lot of repair work, and NAD and NMN are used in a lot of repair work. We'll talk about in a second the anti-aging side as well, how they work. So yeah, you'll basically find that instead of sleeping, say 7, 8, 6 hours a night, you'll end up sleeping 3 or 4, and you think, oh my God, that's brilliant. Wow, I've got so much done. I slept 3, 4 hours. Next morning, you wake up to like 4-ish hours, and you maybe went to the bathroom, and after you think, well, I don't feel going back to bed. Let me crack on with it. And you'll just get on and do so much. This will last a short while, till eventually it'll catch up. But what happens, you basically feel very little tiredness because you're giving your mitochondria so much fuel to make more energy that they're working away quite happily until, you find that there's another bottleneck, and there's another bottleneck further up the chain that you then have to clear, which we're always working on. So, yeah, you feel those. So you have NAC, ALA, the cheap ones, $20, $25 big bottle, last you, 2 to 4 months each. Resveratrol and its cousin Pterostilbin. Pterostilbin also from the grape, this time the grape seed. So, but grapes as well, and grape seed is very interesting. You've also heard about how good blueberries are for us and so on as well. Pterostilbin also comes from blueberries. You've probably heard of the expression flavonoids or bioflavonoids, also sometimes called polyphenols, basically. These are different chemicals made by plants. And what I'll give you my theory of aging, if your ears aren't bleeding already by now, in a little while. But basically, if you look at nature, we've evolved. Let's pretend that once we became upright humans, upright apes, once we were apes working on 2 legs, let's pretend that evolution started from there. Miraculously, we were born then. So that's been about 4.5 million years. Forget the 100-odd million years before that. So that's 4.5 million years. We spent 99.9% of the time, being hunter-gatherers. So most of it is gathering, less of the hunt. So if we ate meat, it would be once a weekish, maybe a couple of days when the hunters caught something. We didn't have fridges, so there's no storing stuff. So they'd catch it, cook it, eat it. It would be mostly raw or rare, I'm sure. Not so much well done. But we'd survived mostly on raw vegetables. Vegetables, fruits, seeds, leaves, herbs, plants. So in these plants, herbs, seeds, whatever, we have seen there's lots of these phytochemicals, these natural chemicals made by plants that we've had in our diet for millions of years, we've grown up on, and they seem to do us wonders. So lots of research and studies around resveratrol, pterostilbin, lots of other flavonoids and polyphenols, and how they're very, very, very good for your health. And they talk lots of things about, sorry, go on, Rick.
Romy, we have a question just on this topic that's related. I just wanted to ask you this. So for those of us in the audience who may not have access to these types of supplements, or whether it's cost or other reasons, is there a correlation between meat consumption and increased energy longevity?
Yes, unfortunately, because I like meat, unfortunately, it's a very negative correlation.
Okay.
It would be not quite -1, which is a completely inverse negative correlation, but it won't be far off. So yeah, and there's lots of reasons for this. So we do, everyone out there, we do need certain nutrients from meat. If you're a vegetarian or a vegan, while some aspects, if you do it correctly, are extremely healthy, you can end up being deficient in certain things as well. So yeah, I know we have the paleo diets and carnivore diets, and they have some great strengths, but they're not everything. We still need the phytochemicals. So what I can tell you, for example, there was the world's largest study into cancer in China, and it took over a 10 or 20 year period, basically. And they were looking at cancer rates, cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, etc., and they're tracking from villages to major cities and over generations. From what I remember, it was many 100 million a study. They're probably getting as close to everyone, 1 billion as possible. Huge study. And they basically found that when the areas were not eating meat, i.e. when they were poorer, their health, longevity, and disease occurrence was far lower. When they started having prosperity and eating meat, the disease went up hugely, including also the dreaded cancer, cardiovascular. And I can tell you, as someone who's tried being vegetarian quite a few times, I normally manage 1 to a couple of months, and then it's either the smell of bacon or lamb chops or the thought of a juicy ribeye. That's my weakness, and that's it. It's all over.
You're an animal. That's disgusting.
It's all over. But I can tell you, so when I'm purely vegetarian, and when I do it, I try and do it reasonably well. My energy levels are through the roof. So I can tell you that a couple of times that once I've been veggie, let's say a month or so, and I would feel, you do feel, if you do it properly, if you're like me, 50, you feel at least, you feel 15 years younger, not 10 years younger, 15. This is without the NAD, NMN, all the other stuff, just something that you can do yourselves. That, my energy will be through the roof. I'll be very young, active, dynamic, physically strong, lifting heavy weights. You feel like, you're working like a much younger body, basically. But when I would then have my little breakdown and I'd fall off the wagon, I'd go out for a juicy steak. So I would say to myself, right, I want to be vegetarian. Once a month, I let myself eat red meat. Once a month, chicken. Once a month, fish. I will still have lots of dairy, which is obviously, it is what it is. If I have to be vegetarian, that's the only way I'm going to survive. So anyway, and I could find after eating the red meat, the lamb or meat, that the next day I would feel basically slightly ill, like I had slight flu. And it would last for 2-ish days. And the third day, I start to feel better. And I noticed this pattern. After it happened 3 times, I thought, wait, this is the third time I can see a pattern. I've had meat and I start to feel ill. My energy's gone really low. And I had a friend who's been doing the same. One day, he said the same thing to me without me having ever mentioned it. When he eats meat, he feels ill for a couple of days and his energy's lower. So I can see that, yes, in terms of energy, meat is, it's not the best thing for us. We do need a few things from it which are harder to get from a vegetarian diet, like B12 and a few other things, but it'll slow you down a lot.
I know we're towards the end of our time here, but I just want to make one connection that I hear a lot from nutritionists is that it's most important for each of us to get to know our own body, because our own bodies are unique, where some people might adapt to meat in a different way than others, whether it's your blood type or whatever things you have going on in your system. There's not really a one size fits all, even though there might be trends that are helpful. Yeah. Just want to name that, and I'm sure your research shows things are similar too.
There are whole books about the different blood type diets and so forth, and also which areas you're from. So, for example, where I'm from, we're supposed to have quite strong gastric acid for cutting through meat. Other places in the world, less so. And so in terms of our biochemistry, so basically my understanding of the human body is that there are basic rules that our body's supposed to follow in terms of biochemistry and genetics and so forth. But obviously, they're not followed perfectly. Otherwise, we would never age, we would never die. We would all look the same and have perfect health. So all of our biochemistry is slightly different. Some of it is actually dictated by your genetics, your genome. Your genome is then dictated by epigenetic factors. So epigenetics, just to touch on quickly, epigenetics is a relatively new branch of science about how your environment changes us, basically, and we've seen that, and it actually changes our genes, how our genes express themselves. So in epigenetics, it's a study about how to try and switch off the bad genes and switch on the good genes. So we've seen that everyone's biochemistry is very different now. So yeah, some people do cope with, some people just cannot live on a vegetarian diet, they need meat, in which case I would say try and go for the grass-fed, healthier stuff, not the grain-fed cattle. Grain-fed cattle, there's a big problem in the West, is that they're high in omega-3s. The grain haven't got any real nutritional value to them at all. They're unnatural because obviously wheat is synthesized, genetically synthesized, engineered basically. And organic. So grass-fed, they have the omega-3s. So Dave Asprey, with his bulletproof butter, he makes a big noise about having grass-fed butter, and he's correct, because there's omega-3s and not omega-6s, which cause inflammation. So no, meat can be good, dairy products can be good, but in moderation. But loads of studies that show overall, if you want to have cancer or cardiovascular, carry on with what you're doing. If you want to be healthier, unfortunately, because it's boring, we need to live a bit of a boring-ish lifestyle food-wise.
Romy, sorry to interrupt you. Final last 30 seconds. Yes or no answers, if you could. Quick fire. Is this stuff addictive? Just wondering, are these products addictive?
No, definitely not. That's why we cycle also to check. Yeah.
Right. Second question from Chandres. Can it be too late to begin with all these products?
Never. We have quite a few clients in the 80s, and I'll just tell you quickly. I can think of 2 in particular, and they normally message me on every few weeks saying that I can give you a quick anecdote. One started when he was around very late 70s or 80. He said, I went out thinking I would do a 10K run. He's quite fit anyway. He said, I ended up doing 16K. And the only reason I stopped, because I thought, oh, God, I've been going too long and I'll be suffering like hell. So this is a guy we have quite a few in the 80s, and we have similar stories. And he basically said that, I expected that I would be laid out for a week. He said 2 days later, I did another 10 or 16K. He said I was shocked. So, not addictive. The older you are, the more you will feel some of the benefits, basically, because they will go to work where they're really needed, and you've had a shortage for many, many years. So never too old. I mean, you can find in longevity, if you look at the investors and most longevity startups and, you know, Peter Diamandis' effort with his old Longevity X and so forth, that, yeah, most of those guys, the old money, imagine by the time you made a lot of money, if you make it, it's taken you many years, you're older, you now have money, you don't have time or quality of life. So most of the big investors, normal longevity stuff, are much older folks, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s, because they're the ones with the maximum amount to gain as well. So
Got it.
better to do something than nothing, always.
Excellent. So we've got it. So sad that we have to cut you off, and apologies. But I mean, you've got a wealth of knowledge about this, and we've got to.
We only scratched the surface. Scratched the surface.
Of course, I'm going to hand it to Rick to close the proceedings. But Rick, over to you.
Yeah, thank you again, Romy, for your research and your tips. And as Romy has mentioned, we're going to put the show notes into our speakers page on our website. Go to Straight Talk Live, straighttalk.live, and go to the speakers page. Under Romy, we'll put our notes for some of the recommended protocols and things to check out that are going to help with anti-aging and more vitality, etc. So, Romy, thank you for that information. And thank you for your complimentary samples for me and Af. I appreciate it. We like you for it.
Very, very well.
And most importantly, thank you for helping inform our audience of the latest biohacks and ways that we can all improve our health and well-being.
Yeah. No, it's my pleasure. I forgot to...
Oh, yeah. Did you have
where can we find you, Romy?
I was going to say, if you have any questions, then you can always, if you just go to our website, it's very easy, BTL.science. So you can see the company name in the BioTech Life Sciences, and then you can just send an email to info@btl.science. Okay. And then, we can answer all your questions. And we, unfortunately, we're not allowed to divulge all of our research. Obviously, a lot of it's proprietary, but also we're not allowed to talk about disease prevention and treatments and cures, something that the pharmaceutical side of the business is working on. But we will help people out as much as we can. So
check that out.
A huge wealth of information there anyway.
Excellent. So please go there to find out more of this information from Romy and his team. And just lastly, next week, we're going to be talking to Milo Jones, author, cybersecurity expert, around anticipating strategic surprise. How do we actually predict the next COVID, the next market crash, these large black swans that are in our lives? What if there's actually a way to do that with our organizations and our teams and our leaders? So that's what we're going to dive into next time. And then lastly, a quick reminder, all of our guests are plugged into our Maverick Leaders program. We're going to get the best of these episodes for you. They're already up there. If you check out straighttalk.live/MLP, you can sign up for this free educational service to learn more and better yourself in the different ways of what our guests and the wisdom of our guests have to offer you in all the amazing topics that we explore to become the Maverick leader that you are. Okay. Thank you all. Af, any final words?
No, thank you very much. Exciting show. I know a lot more about biohacking than I did about an hour ago. And Rick and I, although we are young, we want to feel younger. And so we're going to go down this path.
Always. We always want to feel younger. And we want to hold on to that for as long as possible, which is actually what we are doing already now. We're definitely doing that, which is good.
Excellent.
Good stuff. Thank you so much. Look after yourselves. Namaste. Yes. Have a good day, and see you in the next show.
Pleasure.
See you next show.
Definitely. All right, guys.